Morning and welcome to day 2 of our Village and Community Halls Conference. My name is Helena Stubbs, Village Halls Advisor at Rural Action Derbyshire, and I will again be chairing this morning's event. Some of you joined us yesterday and some of you will be joining us for the first time, so welcome. So please bear with me if I repeat some of the opening remarks. Of course, we would like to have been back to normal by now and be able to deliver this event in person rather than virtually, but we felt that everybody's welfare should be our main priority. Aptly named, the overall conference theme, as you know, is Refresh, Restart and Recover. As we continue to emerge from the pandemic, yesterday we heard an inspirational opening speech from Councillor Barry Lewis, leader of Derbyshire County Council. And he spoke how communities can build back better for a more sustainable future. He stressed that the pandemic's legacy should not all be negative and that communities should capitalise and take advantage of new opportunities post-COVID, such as people working together more to solve community problems, providing more services locally, as more people are moving into rural areas and many are now working from home. Halls are well placed at the heart of our communities and they should be looking to fulfil the changing needs of local residents, existing and the newcomers. Yesterday's theme was working towards a zero carbon future. So as we know, cutting down travel time and reducing CO2 is all part of the aim as we move forward. We all know that community buildings have an enormous role to play in bringing about community renewal, addressing social exclusion and bringing communities back together again, now more than ever. And now is a good time to encourage village halls to consider new ways of delivering a wide range of services by becoming multi-purpose centres and hubs and safe places where people can seek support. We hope this event will refresh and inspire you, the volunteers who give up your time and energy to run community halls for the benefit of all our rural communities. We have some new ideas and case studies to help you in your recovery towards longer term sustainability. Spreading the event over 3 days is a new and ambitious endeavour for us, and by doing so, it should hopefully avoid too much screen time overload. So people can dip in and out of the sessions that they're interested in over the next few days, and we hope it all runs smoothly. I think yesterday people were doing that. People were just joining either the first, second or third session, the ones that they wanted to. Firstly, though, we must acknowledge our event sponsors. We're extremely grateful for their kind and generous support, and it's enabled us to offer this event free to all of our delegates. So notably, ESP Projects Limited, they are our overall sponsors of the event. They are an ethical IT service provider for businesses of all sizes and are based not far away in Sheffield. In fact, ESP has provided us at RAD with excellent and friendly IT services and support over the past few years, and we are delighted that they are supporting our event. Here's what they've got to say.
Many IT companies claim that they will offer unlimited IT support to their clients, but how often do they deliver? Here at ESP, we guarantee to deliver. We have unrivaled expertise when it comes to IT support. From PCs and laptops to servers and NAS devices, you can have the peace of mind knowing you have unlimited access to our IT engineers. If an issue cannot be resolved remotely by our help desk, we will come to you and collect or fix the system wherever you are in the UK. That's a promise. The benefits of working with ESP include guaranteed 4-hour response time, 9 out of 10 calls answered within 30 seconds, free 2 hours advisory ICT consultancy per month, add-on services such as early bird service and Saturday support. We don't take the one-size-fits-all approach to IT support contracts. We tailor them to suit your needs and budget. Need a helping hand with your IT? Get in touch with ESP.
Right, just trying to unmute myself there, sorry. So that was a good clip to introduce you to ESP and what they're about. But equally, we'd like to thank Norris and Fisher. They're independent chartered insurance brokers, and they've kindly agreed to be our sponsors for today. They've got chartered status, which is the gold standard for insurance brokers, and it is currently only met by a selected number of firms. They are one of only a few insurance providers that specialise in cover for charities and community groups, as well as for commercial, and that offer bespoke policies for village and community centres. If you want to read more about the sponsors and what they can offer and how you can get in contact with them, the links to their websites, please look at the conference event web page, and there is a link there to more information about our sponsors. So please, if you do get a chance, have a look there. Some of you may remember meeting Martin Ingram from Norris and Fisher. He's supported our past training events and conferences, and he's delivered an online session for us earlier this year. So I'm sure lots of you are perhaps familiar with Norris and Fisher. So let's get down to the technical housekeeping for this morning. We are using Zoom, as most people are familiar with it, but people can usually can see each other, so we've automatically muted people and the videos have been turned off. However, if yours isn't turned off, please go to view in the top right-hand corner of your screen and click speaker view, and please do stay in mute. To help you to participate though, we will really welcome your questions. That's part of the morning session. We've allowed time for questions and answers. If you can put them in the chat function at the bottom of your screen, that would be very welcomed. But if we don't get a chance to answer everybody's questions this morning, we will aim to get back to you over the next few days. But please do pose your questions. So down to today's speakers, as you know, we're focusing today on community hubs, more than just a meeting place. And we're very pleased to have 4 speakers in total today with a wide range of knowledge and experience on delivering community projects. So first speaker is Beverley Parker. I'm sure lots of you will know that she's our Chief Executive Officer of Rural Action Derbyshire, introducing what community hubs are. That will be followed by Christine Nicholls, Community Development Officer from Community Action Northumberland, and she will be talking about their project on warm hubs. So that will be interesting to hear about that. After the short coffee break, we are delighted that we have got Norman Harris, a trustee of the Ashbourne Pavilion Sports and Community Partnership, and their new project called Pavilion in the Park in Ashbourne. And he's going to be joined with their lead consultant for the project, James Dacra from FCPR Environmental and Design. So lots ahead, lots of things to look forward to this morning. But first, we're delighted and honoured that Angelique Foster, Derbyshire Police and Crime Commissioner, is kindly making the opening address for today's event. She gave up a cabinet member position at Derbyshire County Council earlier this year, if you recall, to take up her role as the Police and Crime Commissioner. And central to her ambitions is reducing the fear of crime across Derbyshire's communities by increasing police numbers and patrols, providing a strong police presence in towns and villages, and supporting police officers in the use of powers such as stop and search to protect communities from crime. So I'm delighted to hand over to Angelique. So welcome, Angelique.
Hello, I'm Angelique Foster, Derbyshire Police and Crime Commissioner. I was elected in May 21 to serve for a 3-year term. It is my responsibility to set policing priorities in Derbyshire, which are delivered by the Chief Constable and her officers. Before I was elected, I pledged to address 6 key priorities within my manifesto. These are now included in my police and crime plan. They include strong local policing, which will see more police on our streets and a focus on neighbourhood policing, clamping down on neighbourhood crime and antisocial behaviour, including burglary and drug dealing. Ensuring road safety is prioritised and the fatal causes of traffic collisions are addressed. Making sure rural crime doesn't go overlooked and officers are fully trained to deal with incidents. Ensuring all victims of crime are supported and those most at risk in our society are safeguarded. Lastly, I want to drive efficiencies and ensure that taxpayers' money is being spent wisely and resources are managed effectively. These priorities reflect the many conversations I have had with different communities across Derbyshire. I will continue to listen to the public and understand new and emerging issues which can impact on the quality of life of residents. I have already begun working to address these priorities through targeted investment. I recently awarded 22 grants to local community groups and parish councils to address issues of antisocial behaviour across Derbyshire. Initiatives such as CCTV and diversionary activities for young people are just some of the things which will be funded over the coming months. I will soon be launching a further grant aimed at addressing road safety with a particular focus on speed enforcement. I know firsthand when speaking to residents how speeding can impact on their quality of life. I have also recently launched a dedicated Neighbourhood Watch Support Fund, which will enable volunteers to apply for funding to address community safety and promote and increase the number of watchers across Derbyshire. Neighbourhood Watch volunteers are the eyes and ears in our communities and provide the police with much needed intelligence to drive down criminality. I know how village halls across Derbyshire play a vital part in the life of local residents. They are a place to socialise, have fun, but more importantly, they can mobilise people when communities face challenges. During the pandemic, for example, village halls were used for providing vital medical support, for storing donation to food banks. I'm very interested to understand how community hubs are being used across Derbyshire and share best practice wherever possible. They can accommodate a variety of initiatives tailored for the local community. And from a local policing perspective, this could include diversionary activities for young people, classes to educate the elderly on fraud and computer safety, and meetings to address community concerns or support victims. But I know that to maintain a village hall is a big responsibility and a real challenge for some of our parish councils and community groups. They need a lot of dedication and commitment and can be expensive to run. But they play such a vital part in our communities that we must do everything we can to preserve them. In my role as Police and Crime Commissioner, I will continuously engage with all the diverse communities across the county, and I know that the many village halls that we have will play a big part in delivering my plan to make Derbyshire a safer place. Thank you.
Helena, you're just on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. Can hear me now? Yeah, we'd like to thank Angelique for those kind opening words for the day. We're very grateful for her support and her opening address to hear of her priorities in making Derbyshire a safer place. It's really good to hear that they're acknowledging the vital roles that village halls play and that they must be preserved in helping Derbyshire to be a safer place, which I think we all know. Right, so we're ready for session one. So moving over to a session on understanding community hubs, which is being delivered by Beverley Parker. Beverley is keen to support village halls and our communities to address rural disadvantage, and keen to develop any new projects to meet the changing needs as we move forward. So things like the IT and the digital hubs, food banks and those sort of things. But Beverley, I'll hand it over to you because you can talk more about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Helena. Good morning, everybody. I'm going to give you a short presentation about what I see as community hubs. I'm hoping that I can share my screen so that you can see my slides. Just bear with me a second. So I'm the Chief Executive of Rural Action Derbyshire. I took over as Chief Executive, I think it's about 6 years now. The time absolutely flies. My background is mostly in working in local authorities. Worked in a range of local authorities over the years. I'm not seeing that I can share my slide. Oh, no, it's just popped up. Brilliant. So I can share my slides with you. Just bear with me while we sort the technology out. Hopefully you can now see my slides. So here we go. So having worked in lots of different local authorities, I think I've come into contact with a number of community hubs over the years. I don't profess to be an expert in community hubs, more as a practitioner, having been involved with community development for something like 30 odd years. And my most recent job before I was at Rural Action Derbyshire was working for the Audit Commission, where we looked at services very much from the perspective of the community and people who access those services. So having come into contact with lots of different hubs, I'm just going to give you a bit of a flavour of what I think community hubs are all about. But I would say that, you know, I am not an expert in community hubs. So this is from Locality. Locality is an organisation that provides a lot of funding and expertise around community development and community hubs. And in their words, community hubs are very much community-led. There are an awful lot of neighbourhood hubs, or often called community hubs, which are service-led. They're kind of top-down, funded by local authorities or by health authorities, and their main purpose really is to deliver services. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but I wouldn't call those genuine community hubs. Community hubs need to be community-led. Local people are involved, they make decisions about how the buildings are run, they support the volunteering, and they're typically managed by a community-led organisation. Community hubs are multi-purpose. They provide a whole range of different services and activities, including things like parent and toddler groups, health and wellbeing groups, employment, childcare. Quite often they're libraries, and they provide advice and information. I think the other thing about community hubs is that they make use of local assets, and that might be reusing buildings. It might be a case of taking over buildings that are redundant or underused. And then finally, community hubs need to be they need to be enterprising and resilient. They need to be sustainable. And like a village hall, they make income from grants, donations, but also from hiring out space, sometimes from delivering contracts as well for local authorities. And I think the other thing that's not on here is that community hubs need to be flexible. They need to change within the needs of the community. And I think that's a key attribute for me of a good community hub. So moving on, what are the benefits of community hubs? This is localities terms. They think that community hubs create more cohesive and resilient communities. They are a way of improving services, but also integrating them, so you get kind of a one-stop shop approach. It can transform existing buildings and provide a focus for regeneration within the community. But what does this mean for rural areas? Why is this important? And I think I'm going to give you an example now of a kind of a fairly typical Derbyshire village. It's actually the village I grew up in, so that anyone here who knows me will know exactly where I'm talking about. But actually this village is very typical of a lot of mid-sized Derbyshire villages. So in this village, nearly 1 in 5 people is retired or not working, and that is pretty much the same as the whole of Derbyshire. Around 20% of people are retired. Nearly 1 in 5 have health conditions that limit their daily life. Again, another 20%. In a lot of rural areas, I'm sure you all know, local services have disappeared. So car ownership is quite high because having a car is essential. And for people who do work, most people don't work where they live. Local employment is very limited, so virtually everybody commutes out of the village to work. And I think what we've seen over the years is there is no social hub in the village anymore. Some people have absolutely no reason to step outside the house. If they don't go to pick up a paper or pick up a pint of milk, then they just don't go out. And many people find it quite difficult to get out and about because of those long-term health conditions that I've already mentioned. So this average Derbyshire village has 872 people in the last census, living in 375 households. That makeup is 275 families and 95 people living on their own, including 42 pensioners who live on their own. Of those 872 population, there's 606 vehicles in that village. And going back to what we were talking about yesterday in terms of the impact of village halls on the local environment, you can see that actually that's an awful lot of cars in one village. There are 31 households that don't have a vehicle, and 20% of the population in this village are over 65. In terms of health and employment, this village is kind of bang on the average. 18.2% people of day-to-day activities are limited by their health, and 40 people in this village say that they have bad general health, and 11% or 96 people are providing unpaid care. 70% nearly in employment and 31% not working. So bang on average, really. And this is the village then and now. When I was growing up in that village quite a long time ago, there was quite a lot of social activities. There was 2 pubs, there was a shop, a post office, a twice weekly doctor's surgery in the village hall. There's a cricket club, a football club, a thriving WI, lots of different clubs and activities, and a couple of very well attended annual events. And looking at that same village now, we have 1 pub. It's a Chinese takeaway, no shop, no post office, no doctors. The annual community events don't happen anymore, and the WI is closing this year because they're down to a handful of mainly elderly women. The parish church is one of 3 churches which share a vicar instead of having a rector. And I think you can see, there in this fairly typical village, the point that I made earlier, that there is no reason for some people to go out of the house. They don't dip down to the pub, down to the shop. They don't see anybody from day to day, and they are quite isolated. And I think this is where community hubs come in. The picture is of Monkey Park community hub. Quite a lot of community hubs are in the more urban areas, and that's because there are bigger populations to support those places. But I still think that your village hall can become a community hub, not necessarily to do all of these things, but to do quite a few. And some of the things that community hubs do, quite often they become community shops. And we've got speakers, I think, later on in the conference from the Plunkett Foundation, who support a number of community shops. They can be community cafes. I know that I think it's Moreton Village Hall runs a community cafe where people can just drop in and have a cup of tea and chat to somebody. They can be places where people can learn new skills, as Angelique Foster just talked about, where you might learn about digital, you might learn how to protect your belongings from a security point of view, how to be aware of spam and cybercrime. It might be somewhere where people can access help and support. It might be a weekly drop-in, for example, from the local crime prevention officer or from somebody from the local authority. And I think key, and this has happened a lot over the past 2 years, but traditionally, community hubs are the focal points when things go wrong in a community. My first slide, the sharp-eyed of you will notice that was from when the dam at Whaley Bridge was threatened with bursting, and the community was evacuated. Community hubs can be digital hubs, something that we're really keen on developing. If anybody here is interested in becoming a digital hub, we've got some really exciting news coming along from some more funding that we've secured to look at digital. And finally, community hubs are places where people can meet, they can laugh, they can dance, eat, talk, sing, or just sit and feel part of something. And I think that is the key really for a lot of people who feel increasingly isolated within communities. So my final slide, if you want to find out more, there's a lot of advice available, but these two guides I think are really pivotal. The first one is from locality, and that's called the Community Hub Handbook. It's a how-to guide in terms of how to set up a community hub. And I think the other guide is from some research that was pulled together as a result of the COVID-19 emergency. And there's a huge amount of learning from how communities can work together and how community hubs have helped to respond to COVID-19. I think we all recognise that COVID is here to stay, but actually there are ways in which we can work together to support local people. And many of you will have been involved in that during the past couple of years. So without further ado, that is the end of my slideshow. I'm going to hand you back to Helena.
Thank you, Beverley. That's really interesting to hear about what halls can do. Many halls are doing a lot of these things already, as we know. It's difficult to define the difference between a community hub and perhaps what's happening already. I think it's very much looking now, especially post-COVID, of what halls might want to do to expand their services, to do things a little bit more that may be outside the traditional things of their charitable purposes in their governing document. And it's looking at really what your community is needing now. So part of that is another idea that was started with in Northumberland. So the idea of a warm hub, bringing people together, but with multi-purpose reasons to do that. So we're delighted that Christine Nicholls from Community Action Northumberland has joined us this morning. So good morning, Christine.
Morning.
I'll pass you over, and what we'll do, if people want to submit questions, can they please put it in the chat? Because when Christine's finished, we've allowed 15-20 minutes for Beverley and Christine to answer any questions that you want answering. So, okay, I'll pass you to Christine. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christine Nicholls. Work for Community Action Northumberland. I'm a community development officer, and I'm the organisational lead for energy equality. I'm ready for the slides now, Sky. Excuse me. So we have a scheme which is called Warm Hubs. It's been running for about 5 years, originally started as a pilot and funded by Northern Gas Networks. Next slide, please. Okay, Warm Hubs, there's 3 strands to Warm Hubs, and that is that it supports community buildings. Now, part of that includes regular support, I guess, that all the network members give to community buildings, which is looking at governance, insurance, checking out the building itself, doing an energy audit, ensuring that, the building is fit for purpose. I've got things popping up on my screen here, sorry. Ensuring the building is fit for purpose. So we do energy audits, we do dementia awareness audits to make sure the building is fit for use. Now, sometimes community buildings can join part of the Warm Hub scheme and they can be literally semi-derelict, but that's fine because Warm Hubs is about bringing that building up to scratch, looking at funding grants to bring in to make accessible toilets, etc., for decorations, to make sure they have everything that they need to deliver a Warm Hub service along the line. One of the things that Warm Hubs isn't is a luncheon club. So it's got the 3 strands. The first one is the community buildings, and the energy theme runs right the way through Warm Hubs. So we look at working with the community building to make it more energy efficient, sustainable. For the future, we've put PV panels in, we've put air source heat pumps in, we've put LED lights and anything we can insulate the building to make sure that we reduce the carbon footprint of the building. So the first part is to make the building appropriate for the work it's going to be delivering. Next slide. Okay, this is a picture of an LED light, and that is because a lot of people think that when we talk about putting in energy saving light bulbs, they have to take out strip lights, and you don't. You can actually get an LED strip light, which will reduce your bills, the lighting side of the bill by about 2/3. So don't automatically think that if a building isn't energy efficient, certainly when it comes to lighting, that you have to rip out all the old lights and put new LEDs in. You can literally buy an LED strip light to go into there. Sorry, that's why I added that one. Next. Okay, the second strand. So we support the buildings, as we said, but we also support volunteers. So like all the network members, we work with volunteers, and we wouldn't be able to deliver the service that we do without them. So we provide training. Now we provide energy training. So we work with volunteers to become energy agents, so they can support people locally with energy advice and energy issues, and fit basic energy measures into people's homes to ensure that we can reduce their bills and keep their house a lot warmer. We provide dementia training, first aid, a whole range of training which is available. Now, this is all funded via the scheme, so anybody can join the Warm Hub scheme, and because it's absolutely free, but because we're funded by Northern Gas Networks, we have money there that we can pay for all the training, we can pay for all the work that we do to the community buildings, and so it works really well at the moment. So the next slide. Okay, and then the final strand is that we support communities. This is one of our events. I don't know if anybody knows Northumberland. This is in Sea Houses, and you can see that a Warm Hub event is basically what I said it wasn't, which is a luncheon club. So Warm Hub can be anything you want it to be, depending on the capacity of each individual building. This particular one is, you can see there, probably fish and chips. So instead of doing any cooking, we just order fish and chips from the local fish and chip shop in Sea Houses, and we deliver to the community. Now, this could be an afternoon tea group, it could be a coffee morning, it could be a parent and toddler group, it can be anything that the events, whatever suits the demographics, whatever suits the organisation, because a Warm Hub belongs to the community and to the building. It's not Cannes Warm Hub. Everyone is different, everyone is tailor-made to meet the needs of the local community. There's about 200 people at this event. That's just 2 tables. We had 6 tables in total, and we put a cinema film on, so you can see the amount of people that we have. pre-pandemic, excuse me, so we have 30 warm hubs at the moment. That's 30 community buildings that have signed up to the warm hub scheme, 30 community buildings that are more energy efficient and who have a lower carbon footprint. We have 720 volunteers, and we have nearly, pre-pandemic, we had nearly 20,000 people a year attending these buildings for advice, support, just a touch base, social activities. Could be something like fish and chips, could be something like, as I said, coffee, tea, etc. Next slide. So what are the benefits? Well, if you joined the Warm Hub scheme, you can get a small grant, and very often these small grants, we're only talking £200 or £300, but that can very often buy cups and saucers, plates, things that are dementia friendly. I mean, a lot of village halls in Northumberland just have the basic white or cream crockery, which isn't appropriate for people with dementia. So it may be that they buy new crockery. It could be that they make their building more dementia friendly, a whole range of things. So we offer a small grant. Again, that all comes as part of the funding package. As I said earlier, support with governance, insurance policies. Sometimes if the halls are providing a meal that they're cooking on the premises, they may need to register as a food business, which is no big deal, to be honest. It's very straightforward and it's free, but we have to advise them of that. Energy audits, dementia audits, accessibility audits. So we have a professional who we pay, again out of the funding, to come in and go around the building. Certainly with the energy audits, we end up with some information that we can use when we apply for funds. So if we want PV panels, if we want air source heat pumps, we use the report that's been produced by the professional to apply for the funds. So we use it as evidence of need. Funding advice and support with applications. So certainly when we look at renewables and accessibility work to the building, we've brought in the Warm Hub scheme over the 5 years has brought in £2.5 million to help develop these buildings. Free training for volunteers, free DBS checks where necessary. So some of the Warm Hubs have become so successful, they may be open every week. I'm thinking of one in particular, opens every Tuesday. People that attend there get a 3-course meal. And during the pandemic, when we've come out of the pandemic, there's not so many people attending the actual Warm Hub events. So we're now delivering an outreach service to people. So we do need to make sure that if somebody's going to someone's house, that they are DBS checked. Access to services. So again, energy advice. We work with the NHS, Age UK, will all use the infrastructure of the Warm Hubs to get their own advice and their own support out. Because I think, as the speaker mentioned earlier, there's very limited services now in villages. So that's why we're using the community buildings as part of the Warm Hub to access those services. Food, drink, company and social activity. Excuse me. I will just say, since the pandemic, Warm Hubs has come into its own. We've used the infrastructure of the Warm Hubs, so we've still been working with the volunteers and using the buildings. They've been used as shops when it's been difficult to get hold of basics like flour, milk, butter, things like that. We've been able to get out nearly 10,000 food banks using the volunteers. So instead of food packages, so instead of people coming to the Warm Hubs, the volunteers have been going to people's homes. We've been delivering thousands and thousands of hot meals to people's homes, including Christmas meals, hampers. We've also been delivering grow your own produce, flowers, plants, anything to people interested, jigsaws, other types of puzzles and things. Once the Warm Hub infrastructure is in place, even if the building isn't being used, you've got those volunteers in place who know then how to work with their own community and have those links already established. Is there another slide, Sky? Okay. These are examples of how a basic Warm Hub have flourished. So I've said already the home delivery meal service. One of our one of our warm hubs that works with older members of the community has do a lot of work with dementia, and they've now turned the whole village has become dementia friendly. So the shop has had dementia training, the people who work in the shop, local people who aren't necessarily involved with the warm hub have undertaken dementia training. So the whole village is dementia friendly. So people know what to expect if somebody goes into a shop and struggle. We've got breakfast clubs, obviously, which address issues with young people. We've got parent and toddlers. We've got, especially in the rurally isolated areas, which is a lot of the areas that we work with, where parents can come together with their children and meet and socialise. We do a lot of intergenerational work with schools, and we do warm hub exchange visits, which is just within Northumberland, but one warm hub may go visit another one and have lunch or whatever. And sea houses with the fish and chips is always a very popular exchange there. And pop-up hubs where we can actually go into a hall that isn't an established warm hub, but we can create the same sort of environment for people to come into, where they can get access to information, advice, etc. Is there another one? I think there is. Some of the activities taking part at the warm hubs. So again, you might have guessed that Singing for the Brain is the one that's held Stocksfield, which is the dementia village. We put a few cinemas in, which seem to go quite well with the warm hub events. Local kids coming into schools and having lunch with older residents during a warm hub event or meeting. Keep fit, Christmas fairs, music groups, games. Obviously, you can read all that. And a visit from Santa, that'll be happening obviously in the next few weeks. Next slide. So I always find it difficult to explain what a warm hub is, but it's basically, it's a building with volunteers that encourage the community use. And the building has to be sustainable, it has to be energy efficient by the time it's ready to be used, but not when it joins the scheme. The volunteers need to be prepared, they need to know what they're doing, what they're delivering, they need to be qualified in all aspects like food safety, etc., if they're going to be delivering a food service. And it's the community. It's about making sure that we provide access to services for the community, somewhere they can touch base, etc. But it's diversity, and everyone is different. It's a safe, warm place. It's a sustainable building, a place to get information and support. It's educational, and it's a lifeline for a lot of people. During the pandemic, we gave out mobile phones to all our volunteers, who were then able to speak to members of the community. The number was given out, so anybody who had any concerns could ring one of the volunteers. So the warm hub infrastructure was still in place during the pandemic and was busier than ever, basically. It's run by the community for the community, and you can see wonderful place, and it's so much more to so many people. We do have a video that's online on the Community Action Northumberland website, and it's also on the YouTube channel for Community Action Northumberland, and it will give you an indication of how a warm hub will run if you want to go onto there. We're now looking at rolling warm hubs out nationally, and we're hoping to do this via ACRE. We do know that there is funding available for any of the ACRE network members who would like to take part in the scheme and look at running a similar scheme in their own area. That funding should be available for those people. It's already running in Warwickshire, and I think it's starting up in Cumbria. So we've also been down to, we did a pilot down south. So I think if you're interested, then just get in touch with me later on. I think that's me.
Right, thank you, Christine. I think you've packed an awful lot of information in there. It sounds a fabulous project, hitting so many targets and many outcomes, I'm sure, from your aims. It's the sum is greater than its parts type of thing, the outcome. So that does sound a very innovative and worthwhile project to do. So I'm really pleased to hear that maybe there is discussion at the national level with ACRE. So I'm sure we've had messages through on chat already. People are keen on the idea, like the idea, when can they have it here? So there's obviously, there will be demand for it, I'm sure. And it's really good to hear and share good practice, because it's obviously worked that well. And you've delivered it well in Northumberland, but obviously it's key is the funding for it. So obviously, is it Northern Gas Networks that had funded the project? I hope I've got that right.
So the gas distribution networks are all working together now. So they cover the whole country, and it's the gas distribution networks for your area that would fund the project in your area, which isn't necessarily Northern Gas Networks. I think they just work from Leeds north. So Leeds, Bradford, Wakefield is the furthest south they go. So it depends on your area. It could be Cadent, it could be one of the other gas distribution networks.
Yeah. So, and I know Bev will be keen on developing this concept. Is that something that's been discussed at national level, Bev? Do you know?
Yes, it is. We've always been slightly struggled because we weren't in Northern Gas Networks area, but I know Cadent are involved now, and I think today's a really good opportunity to just kind of test the level of interest. We've got a number of people in the chat who've expressed an interest. I've been talking to Paul Dixon at ACRE about whether RAD could work with CAN to set up a scheme in Derbyshire, and you know, really, if we get enough interest, we'll definitely go for it. I think that we could probably get funding from another couple of sources. I think if we had some initial funding from the gas networks, we could probably match that with some local funding as well, because I think that particularly with increasing energy prices, I think not only are halls looking to reduce their carbon footprint and spend less of their money on energy, I think people are too. At the moment, it's a difficult market. You can't really get a better deal. At the moment, most of the energy providers are pitching their new contracts at the cap level. But the market will open up in the future, I'm sure. And then I think people need to be encouraged to look at their contracts and switch, to look at how they can save energy, to look at how they can install energy saving devices. And I think there would be a lot of interest from the general public, but also, it's, as I'm sure Christine would say, it's a really good way to get halls more in touch with their local communities, better used. And it's also a way of supporting people in communities and helping them with other needs. I think we all know of particularly elderly people who are living in properties that are not very warm, not very fuel efficient. Quite often they're not claiming the support that they're entitled to, and it's another way of supporting people in the local community. So I would be really, for me, I think this is one of the things that we've talked about for some time, never really been able to source the funding for. But I think with the opening up of the gas networks, I think we now have an opportunity to go forward. I think there's a couple of specifics in the chat. I don't know whether you want to do those now, Helena.
Well, there's one, yes, and I'm going to direct this to Christine, and it's about the fact that we're churches involved in the Northumberland Warm Hubs project.
Yes, we have five of our warm hubs are in church buildings. We find that warm hubs runs really well with churches because we have the same ethos, if you like, providing a safe, warm, well, usually warm place for people to come together. And it is a social gathering for the people. It's much more for the building and for the volunteers, but we've certainly looked. One of the buildings we had was a church hall, and that was in a semi-derelict state. Now has PV panels. It now has an air source heat pump, and it's fully accessible. So it's been a real turnaround. But yes, we work with churches, and we have one church that is actually a warm hub itself. So as you walk down the aisle to the right, there's just what looks like lots of cupboards, but then 2 days a week, all those cupboards open out, and there's sinks in there, cookers in there. And I have had a comment from one a gentleman who attended that warm hub, and he said he'd never felt so welcome walking into the church to the smell of bacon sandwiches.
Yeah, I can imagine that the demand for this would probably exceed what the funding might be. Did you find that in Northumberland, that there was a lot more of your village halls, community centres that would have wanted to take part and become a warm hub? Because you must be restricted by the amount of funding that would be available.
We said when we had the funding that we would initially we would put together 10, and 10 worked really well. And then I think it was word of mouth, because a lot of halls and community buildings really thought, well, what is this? You know, is it for us? We're already delivering a service. We've got people coming in for coffee mornings, etc. It was only afterwards that they saw the benefits. So then we would get funding for another 5, then another 5, and it went on. I haven't talked about the organisational benefits. So since we started the Warm Hub project 5 years ago, Warm Hubs, I'm not talking about the funding we got to run Warm Hubs. I'm talking about additional funding that Bev was talking about that comes in on top of that. So by having the Warm Hub scheme in place, we were able to attract hundreds of thousands of pounds into the organisation because of Warm Hubs. And I'm running something called the Royal Food Kitchen at the moment, which is with six Warm Hubs, and they're getting up to £3,000 at the moment per hub to deliver healthy eating approach, including energy efficient advice and information. But a lot of it is about healthy eating, nutrition, that side of things. But that money's come in on top of all the other money. So it's like a magnet. It draws money. Every funding bid that we put in, if we put that it's to benefit the Warm Hub, we've, touch wood, never been turned down.
It sounds like it's hitting so many targets, doesn't it? You know, and especially the CO2, the energy theme running through it initially, but it's sort of had so many other outcomes coming from it. And I love the idea that you've been able to provide that free training for the volunteers involved with the village halls. So they will have benefited that. The upskilling of the people running the halls and running the groups and the activities is a bonus.
Well, it's all things that we already do as network members, isn't it? It's just a joined up way of working. That's the only difference, and having that energy theme running through it. So it was never rocket science. It was always about enhancing the work that we're already delivering, but joining it up and then obviously putting a name to it.
Yeah. Any more questions coming through? Yeah, there's quite a lot of people sort of actually putting the hand up and sort of saying, yeah, we would love to be involved. That sort of there's a lot of interest coming through. People like the idea of it.
I don't know, is it worth me just talking a bit about digital hubs? Because I think there is an opportunity here to wrap the two together, or at least broaden out the offer that we can make. I have a question for Christine, if that's okay, first though. Christine, is it the intention that CAN would support other ACRE network members to set up these schemes? Or are we sort of going to design our own? I mean, is there support from CAN as part of the network offer?
We want to keep
my question.
Yeah, we want to keep the integrity of the scheme, obviously, and we want to make, and that's why it was offered to. So we've trademarked Warm Hubs, but we've passed that over to ACRE now, so they then own Warm Hubs, if you like. So it's something that we want to be replicated around the country. So we would support any organisation who would like to take Warm Hubs on. There is at the moment we're developing a toolkit which is partway through. Again, we've managed to get funding to produce that. So that toolkit will be almost an idiot's guide, if you like, to setting up Warm Hub scheme in your area, and everybody's that's going to be available to anybody. ACRE then will link you up with whoever your gas distribution network provider is, and then you would work together on that. So you know, the gas distribution network know about Warm Hubs and want to be involved in Warm Hubs. It's supported by Ofgem. It's in Ofgem's report of good practice, specifically warm hubs. So you can imagine that the gas distribution networks are really keen to get their hands on warm hubs and start getting some of the targets, hitting some of the targets that Ofgem are asking them to via the warm hub scheme. Can I just say one last thing? Would it be possible maybe for Sky to circulate the link to the warm hubs video? Because I think that's got everything on it. That's got information about the building, how it's set up, and it's even got the beneficiaries on there. It's a 20-minute video, but it's really worth sticking to the end.
Yes, of course. I'll send that out to all the delegates after the conference.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
We've got a few questions coming through, but I think if Beverley can mention the digital hubs first, if we do get time to answer some of these smaller questions coming through. If not, we'll get back to you after the event to address those questions. But I think it's interesting to get the digital hub bit in first, Bev.
Yeah, I think we're okay for time actually. It's just really to RAD has been successful in securing a 2-year funding pot from the NHS Charities Together Community Partnership Fund, which is the Sir Captain Tom Moore, who did his walk for COVID. So we've got resources through that route, and that is to do 3 things really. It's about training digital champions. It's also about supporting digital hubs with equipment and kind of infrastructure. And we have talked to many village halls over the past couple of years about digital hubs, something that we feel is an opportunity for halls to expand the services they offer to the community, as well as supporting people who are less able to get online or have concerns about getting online. And it just strikes me that actually there's a lot of crossovers between both warm hubs and digital hubs, and maybe when we look at this, we need to look at the 2 together, and sort of look at making an offer really that is very persuasive to local people to get involved, because not only can they come along and learn some digital skills that will help them to source information about energy, to do their energy switching, for example, but also it's supporting wider skills within the community. So it's really just to say, watch this space, because we will be, we're just recruiting staff at the moment. We'll be launching that programme of work early in the new year. And again, I think village halls would be well placed to look at getting involved in looking at digital alongside the warm hubs idea. There's quite a few questions in the chat, which I think we should perhaps have a look at.
Yeah. There's one here for Christine then. What were your main challenges providing the warm hub service during the early part of the pandemic?
I think getting the word out there and starting from the very beginning and not trying to make any shortcuts, which I think is pretty tempting, especially if for other organisations, if they take it on, it's making sure you get the groundwork in. So, get the building in place. Don't focus on the activity, which is the last thing that you look at. It's about getting the building in the right place. It's about making sure the volunteers are there. Sometimes you have to have volunteer events. So depending on the area that we're working in, there maybe was a shortage of volunteers. So volunteering events, getting people interested, but don't rush it, because sometimes there's pressure put on you by funders to get to a certain place at a certain time. And that can be a challenge, but it wasn't in this particular instance. Can I just say, because I've just looked at one of the questions at the bottom of the chat there, that most of rural Northumberland is off the gas grid. 350 are off the electricity grid. The gas distribution networks have an obligation via Ofgem to work in areas that don't benefit from mains gas. So that's why they were really keen to support warm hubs, because the majority of the warm hubs are not on the gas network.
Right, yeah. Somebody's asking here, we'd like to install a Nest or similar device. Could something like this be funded?
Absolutely. We funded Nest via the small grants Fund, which I talked about earlier, which is a grant that we give. So, and that's really straightforward. So the grant scheme that we run, we get funding in, obviously, from the funders, and we split it up. So much is for funding small grants, so much is for training, etc. So much is to pay staff costs, that type of thing. And we did actually fund a building to get the nests set up through the small grant. And the small grant, you know, Warm Hubs is about supporting volunteers, and they don't need a complicated form to access any of our small grants. It's just a conversation. It would just be somebody who said, this is what we'd like to spend the money on. And we just say, fine, either send us a bill or an invoice, or give us some idea of the costs, and we can either buy it or transfer the money over. So we have supported that. But if not, you'll have something like Community Chest, which is run by your local authority, and they would fund, I would have thought, something like the nest setup.
Yeah, we can advise on how to access local small grant funds that's available. Gareth's asked one of the questions, what is a nest? I didn't explain it, and I'm not 100% certain. So unless somebody...
It's just a way to operate your heating systems and everything automatically. So, well, this is my understanding. This is what we fitted, where you can do it online. So you can put the heating on before a group go into the building. So you don't have to go in hours before and have your heating running. I think that's the type of system that they're talking about.
Yeah. Okay. Any more coming through?
Yeah, we've got a point here from Newton Solney, who would be really interested in both Warm Hubs and digital hubs, which is fantastic news. I think we're getting some really solid support this morning, so that's great news. I think it's something that, you know, we really need to take forward and start developing some proposals. So thank you everybody for you know, putting forward your interest. It's great news.
Thank you for having me. If you want to give out my email address, I'm more than happy for people to contact me directly. I will say it's been a bit nerve-wracking because this is my second day back after 9 weeks off ill.
Oh,
I had a burst appendix, unfortunately.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, so I was wondering if I'm sure it was a bit of a garbled mess, but hopefully, as long as you got a basic understanding of what I was saying, then I'll be happy with that.
Thank you, Christine. No, it's been absolutely really fascinating. I mean, I didn't realize it was such broad ranging outcomes from your project. And I love the idea that you've got, you know, you're supporting the community buildings, you're supporting the volunteers, and then that in turn is actually supporting the communities. So it's a win-win situation. So I think it's a really good model that, you know, it will be replicated, no doubt, much wider around the country. So thank you, Christine, and I hope you are, you know, on your road to recovery. We've allowed you to spin it a little bit. It's brilliant that you were able to join us, and you're very welcome to stay for the rest of the day's session. So if there's no more questions on that, we've finished slightly early. So what we could do is either have a longer break, because the next session is at 11 o'clock. I'm not sure whether Norman and James are with us at the present, but
Eleanor, I think we should start at 11 o'clock in case anybody wants to join specifically for that one. I don't think we can start it early.
Yeah, okay. So,
Helena, the other point I would just say is we have a number of people from outside of Derbyshire on the call today. I know I can see in the chat that there's been a conversation between RCC Leicestershire and somebody from Horton. We've also had some interest from Aston-by-Stone in Staffordshire, which is not too far away, but we will make contact with our colleagues in Staffordshire and just let them know that that Aston-by-Stone would also be interested if we were to set up a scheme.
I think Support Staffordshire have probably joined. They were with us yesterday.
Yes, yeah.
And
but we'll make sure that they get. We pass that contact on to them as well.
Yeah, yeah. And all the slides and the information will be circulated afterwards as well. So it's lovely to have people from other counties as well. So, you know, thank you for joining us, and it's really good to have your comments and your participation. So that's good. I don't think there's anything I can add at the moment. So we'll have the coffee break and resume at 11 o'clock.